Bibliophiles of the internet, my name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you my August wrap-up. So I didn't really have a theme in August, I just kind of read whatever I want, so I guess you can call it Arbitrary August. Hey, see what I did there? Anyways, I'm willing to forget that happened if you are, so let's get started. The first book I read, or rather reread in August, was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I filmed an entire spoiler-free review / discussion for this book specifically centered on how the story explores systematic oppression through its world building, and I will link that video down below. Honestly, I didn't even do this book's brilliance justice in that video. I didn't get around to talking about the complexity of the characters or the quality of the writing and the structure, but I think it's obvious that I live for this trilogy and that I gave this book another 5 stars. Then, from my library, I checked out The Star-Touched Queen by Roshani Chokshi. This is an Own Voices fantasy story about a girl named Maya who is cursed with a horoscope that predicts only death and destruction if she marries. When the king decides to give her over to an arranged marriage for political gain, she accidentally becomes the queen of this otherworldly kingdom called Akron, which is plagued by its own secrets. I genuinely don't understand why this book hasn't garnered more attention and praise. It's beautifully written and crafted, and the world is highly atmospheric. The imagery and descriptions were so vivid and powerful, at times it reminded me of something like The Night Circus or Daughter of Smoke and Bone. This story is really just the perfect blend of imagination, mythology, culture, adventure, and fairy tales. It feels like a classic quest story with mystical helpers, riddles, and obstacles at every turn. I cannot emphasize how much I enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then, of course, I read The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. I love this book. I was a bit nervous, low-key, that N.K. Jemisin couldn't possibly follow up the genius that is The Fifth Season, but somehow, this sequel is even better than the first, and that's saying a lot. It took me over a year to find words enough to properly discuss The Fifth Season, and I have a feeling it's going to take just about as long for me to fully process this masterpiece, because right now, in this moment, I can't even think of what to say. It's brilliant, and that's a massive understatement. But obviously, I gave this book 5 stars. After that, I read the first issue of The Backstagers by James Tynion IV and Ryan Sieg. This comic is about Jory. He's just transferred high schools and he's hoping to join a new club to make some new friends. Jory thinks he wants to join the drama club, but the actors' attitudes don't make him feel very welcome and he ends up mixed in with the stage crew instead. Little does he know there are doors backstage that lead to entirely different worlds, and so the job may be much more risky than he thinks. I had been looking forward to this comic's release for a very long time because it was being advertised as basically Lumberjanes but with dudes, and it totally is. It's hilarious, fun, creative. The dynamic of the stagehands as a group is electric, and actually the supernatural twist of having the entire backstage be like this doorway into other dimensions and worlds worked really well. What's more, I really appreciate how the creators played with color tones and paneling, especially in new, exciting, and refreshing ways to really convey the feeling and atmosphere of the story. Overall, this was just fantastic, and I really look forward to future issues, and I gave this first issue 5 stars. Then I read Shelter by Jung Yoon. This is Own Voices. It's about a Korean-American man named Kyung Cho who is living in the red and barely hanging on to a house that he cannot afford to keep and he cannot afford to sell. Kyung is considering reaching out to his estranged wealthy parents, but then his parents are struck by a traumatic robbery which forces them to move in with Kyung and his family and only puts more strain on an already stressful situation. This book is incredible. Not only did it provide me with an honest lens into what the Asian American experience can look like, but I also found myself really relating to its insight and connecting viscerally with Kyung's inner conflict. The story explores how people of color constantly feel like they're lacking in something, like they have to make up for some unspoken slight, and like they have to always be fighting to prove their worthiness, while all the while any progress they make is continuously being reset. That nagging feeling that you have to maintain a veneer of perfection so that no one can find any more fault with you, like everyone is always waiting for you to make one mistake to prove that you are, in fact, lesser. And Shelter also explores inherited cycles of abuse and sadness, especially when it comes to second-generation children, and I thought that was done very well. What's more, this was an extremely fast-paced read. It was just as captivating and addictive as a mystery novel or a thriller. I just have nothing bad to say about this book. I loved it and I gave it 5 stars. And the last book I read in August was another library book, and that was The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. This is about a woman named Rachel. She's a divorcee, an alcoholic, and recently out of work, but she still rides the same train every day. She becomes obsessed with this couple who live in a nice house by the tracks, and she watches them every day, fantasizing about their lives, and she likes to pretend that they're perfect. One day when she's looking over, she notices something strange happening with the wife, and the very next day, the woman is reported to be missing. Rachel feels an obligation to report what she saw, but she fears that she won't be taken seriously, so she tries to find some other way to get herself involved. I have pretty mixed feelings about this book. On the one hand, it's engaging, it's intense, and it's very hard to put down. Honestly, this story is about awful people making awful decisions time and time again. I hate to invoke this comparison, but it's a slow motion train wreck. You can't look away and you have to find out how it ends. And I think Paula Hawkins did a great job of crafting some unlikable characters whom you truly can't trust. As narrators, they're all completely unreliable, and the truth is constantly being shrouded as the reader is left to grapple with all the things they don't know for sure. Oftentimes, the machinations of the plot are pretty transparent, but overall, it's effective. On the other hand, I found it to be rather unimaginative that all the female characters in this story were so defined by the men in their lives and in many ways dependent on them and destroyed by them. And I found any major reveals to be extremely unsatisfying. Usually when a mystery comes to a head, you have this aha moment where everything clicks into place and you kick yourself for not recognizing the signs earlier, but any explanations given in this book just felt weak. They weren't surprising, refreshing, inspired, and it didn't even feel like they really made sense. So I guess I enjoyed the experience of watching the story unfold, and I enjoyed the build-up as well, but then the payoff ultimately was a real letdown. In the end, I gave this book 3 stars. So those are the books I read in August. If you have any thoughts on any of the books I mentioned in this video today, please feel free to share them in the comments down below. But that is everything I had for this wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.